Indians looking for a new name. Did that surprise you at all? Because we knew Washington's football team was in the crosshairs, and the Indians sort of brought it up by themselves. You didn't hear the Atlanta Braves or the Kansas City Chiefs, but the Indians came out of nowhere, I think.
Yeah, I wondered if it was something. There's a couple things that I think you would probably know better than me. So there's maybe a couple of things I kind of want to run by you when I say this. One, where we knew that John Sherman was kind of in line to buy the team at some point. I wonder if Paul Dolan, who, I've given him a lot of hell over the last couple of years, and some of it deserved, some of it not. I'll be honest with you, but I've always couched it with, it's the best run franchise in the city. He's the most level-headed owner we have. He's done a fantastic job, and if it weren't for a rain delay, he'd have a World Series title. They've done a great job there. I wondered if they were thinking about maybe selling to John Sherman at some point, the majority ownership, and then letting him deal with it. Because I think that Paul Dolan doesn't want to be disliked in the city. I think that a couple times, and you know him better than I do, you've hosted things with him in the past where I know that he's kind of stuck his foot in his mouth over the last 12 months when it comes to Francisco Lindor, but I know that he's a reasonable person and a pretty good owner. And I wonder if he was just like, I've done enough where the logo upsets some people. Now the name's there. Maybe Sherman can buy the team, and then that's it. And then he goes and he buys the Royals, where he's from Kansas City, so that's okay. So I wonder if that was one of the things. The other one was maybe it's time. And maybe there's some sponsorship issues that we don't necessarily know about. Because we found out about Nike, we found out about FedEx. Maybe there's some sponsorship issues that we don't necessarily know about that might affect the Cleveland Indians in this case that maybe we'll find out in the future, but I'm torn. Les, I know that you've watched Indians baseball a lot more than me. But I always say the first game I ever went to, I was 5 years old. My uncle and my dad took me up, and the first thing I saw over at the stadium was the great big Chief Wahoo. And I'm an Indians fan, but at the same time, I remember the first game my dad ever took me to. Am I not going to take my son over the name? If my son, who turns 6 next year, wants to go to a Cleveland Guardians game or a Cleveland Spiders game, and I can't stand the Spiders nickname, but I'll learn to like it. If he wants to go to a game, am I really going to stick my heels in and say no? I heard you're open, and I don't think that I can. I think that a guy who's 34 years old like myself is going to go, yeah, it's the way she goes. And even though I wasn't personally offended, I know that many people were, because it's not about me, it's about other people.
No, but Ken,
and the world is certainly much bigger than me.
No, who do you think they're trying to please with this? It's not like you go out west and you see, and anything I say here or anything anybody says is going to come out wrong to some people, but there are Indian tribes out there, and Andy Baskin will tell you about it, that they gladly wear the emblem, the hat, all that stuff. And so what are you trying to please? 12% of the Indian population? You're trying to please 100% because you're not. The Indian reservation casinos out west loaded with hats and shirts and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to, you got to be careful when you say this. I don't know of anybody who looks at the Indians when it was Chief Wahoo or when it's what it is or the name Indians. I can't think of anybody who looks at that in any way, shape, or form other than honoring it.
Well, I would say I think you're right about that, but I would also look at it and go, it's not that they're trying to appease a certain group of people. I think they're just they're a professional sports franchise. They do have sponsors that they have to deal with, and I think that they're ultimately in a lot of ways thinking, we don't want to upset anybody. Yeah. We want your entertainment money. We want you to come to the stadium. And honestly, I mean, if I start to argue for the Indians' name, where does it get to? Where do I get to? Do I want to do those mental gymnastics? I don't know if I don't know if I really want to do that. So it's definitely a touchy thing. And when you heard Terry Francona yesterday about it, you could hear it, like he beat around the bush for a while when he talked about this. And then it all came to, yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe we can find something else. And, maybe we will find something else. But I ultimately know that I will miss the tradition of the Indians and what I've grown up with. I mean, they've been there my entire life. They've been there your entire life. But am I not going to watch baseball in Cleveland?
No, of course
I'm
you're
going to watch baseball in Cleveland. I'm going to take my sons to baseball in Cleveland.
So we had a Facebook question of the day. Do you think it's time to rename the Indians? Chris Ard says no. Andy Mees says no because it would I would have to invest money in some new jerseys. I've Indians shirts and jerseys still in good condition. I still wear Chief Wahoo caps too. Then Kevin Pyle says no. Leave the name alone. The name doesn't dishonor anybody. It acknowledges Native Americans and Nap Lajoie, the player, the Indians, the name that was derived from the Indians. By the way, that's not true. It's Chief Louis Sockalexis, not Nap Lajoie. Besides, whatever happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Now, I think that theory is gone. Yes, it's time for a change, says Aaron Wood. Glenn Berger says no political correctness in running wild in our society. When will somebody stand up and proclaim enough already? Dolan, Antonetti, and Francona are stewards of the the Indians franchise. The regular Indians fans don't live in the same world the Indians management exists. I won't agree with the name change, but life goes on. Without the Indians' name, tomorrow will not be as bright as yesterday was. I don't know. I don't know if it's that deep, but
well,
let me just say something. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, well, I think when I read what Andy says, I think Andy's right in a lot of ways. And what I see what Glenn says basically the same thing I say. It's like, yeah, I don't want to see the name necessarily change. I don't think that Paul Dolan's a bad guy, and I don't think that anybody who is in the front office with the Indians are bad people and want to be racist or put down any other race of any sort of people whatsoever. But times change. Glenn's going to still be an Indians fan. I'm going to be an Indians fan, and the argument against political correctness, I think that's a losing argument in a lot of ways now. I think that the time to fight the quote unquote fighting political correctness, I think that's a bygone era. That's a bygone day, and it's a pro sports franchise.